Hello everyone, it's Grace and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be doing the Blockbuster Book Tag, which is an original tag by Ian the Reader. I will have his video for this linked down below. He was so kind to tag me in it and I loved his video, so you should definitely go watch it. I thought that this was a great idea for a tag, and there are quite a few prompts actually, but I'm really excited to get into them because I think that there are some really interesting answers. And I just love this idea of connecting blockbuster movies through their main, maybe like theme to a book series. So yeah, needless to say, I thought that this was a really great tag and I was excited to do it when he tagged me. While I loved these questions, some parts of this were actually a challenge because there are a lot of good prompts and I didn't want to reuse anything. I guess that's not a rule. That's a rule that I imposed on myself, but it did get a little bit challenging to come up with something for every one of these. However, I'm excited to share them with you, so let's get right into it. The first question is Back to the Future. Name a book or series with multiple timelines. And so the very first book that came to mind for this is one that just came out in January. I just read it, and that is How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. And the reason that I chose this is How High We Go in the Dark is a sci-fi book, and it's really kind of like a collection of short stories, except that they're all interconnected. So we follow Earth in the near future, and the climate change and melting in the Arctic has uncovered this climate plague, and this plague infects the world, and we kind of watch through the timeline as this plague, well, what it does to the world and how humanity responds to it. And this story spans like hundreds of years. It spans a lot of characters that are interconnected in their stories, and every story is something a little bit different, exploring a sci-fi idea, and the timeline isn't necessarily linear that we're going through. So even though it spans hundreds of years, we jump around a little bit. It was a fascinating book and I would definitely recommend it. Number 2 is Lord of the Rings. Name a book or series with your favorite friendship or friend group. And so for lack of actually choosing Lord of the Rings, the one that I chose for this one is actually Wheel of Time, and it's a very specific subset of Wheel of Time because where I am in the series, I've just finished book 9, and one trend that I've noticed emerging that I am really enjoying is strong relationships and friendships between a lot of the female characters. And so Robert Jordan doesn't always excel at character interactions, I find. Like, he does a good job on a lot of things, but he doesn't always hit on that. However, there are a group of women who I won't name because I don't want to get into spoilers, but it's like 4 or so of them that I really feel have been forming like genuine bonds, and I really like to watch their relationships flourish and the love and support that exists there. So that stood out to me. Prompt number 3 is Shrek. Name a book or series that was better than it first appeared. And so I'm gonna say The Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee, but let me explain. So Jade City I thought was a really good book and I really enjoyed it, but I gave it like 4.5 stars, which obviously is still a really good rating, but I wasn't quite there in terms of like being completely sold with it being like 5-star, a favorite of all time or whatever. So even while it started strong, Jade War and Jade Legacy took it to a whole other level for me, and that series is a favorite of all time now for me. So even though we're starting more on the positive side of the scale, the Greenbone Saga still fits this because it was better than it first appeared, even though it still appeared really good at first, if that makes sense. So like Jade War and Jade Legacy were just so phenomenal. I love that series so much. Number 4 is Titanic. Name a book or series with your favorite romance or a book that is super sad. And because I just reread this and it's fresh in my mind, I decided to go with a book that will fit both of those, and that is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Now, this isn't necessarily my favorite romance of all time, although I do greatly enjoy it. However, this book destroyed me the first time that I read it. It didn't quite have that impact on the second time since I knew what was coming, but I think that this is a great fit for a great romance and a book that is super sad. Question 5 is E.T. Name a book or series with your favorite non-human character. There are tons of book series that have fantastic non-human characters, whether they are like non-human humanoid characters, like species that are kind of humanoid, or whether they're like animal companions. There are a lot of great options. I think this might be recency bias, but regardless, I'm gonna choose Night Eyes from the Farseer trilogy, because Night Eyes is definitely up there with my favorite animal companions now that I have finished Farseer. And I don't know, Night Eyes is just a legend. I love him. I don't know what else to say without spoilers about Night Eyes. He's just, we stand Night Eyes. So prompt 6 is Harry Potter, a book or series that makes you feel nostalgic. And I have to admit, my answer for this is literally Harry Potter, like for understandable reasons, for very obvious reasons. It is the book that I read by far the most often throughout my like adolescent and teen years, so it's the one that best fits in this by far. Like there are other series that make me feel nostalgic, like The Magic Treehouse, for example, is one, or like Winnie the Pooh, things like that, but yeah, the Harry Potter series really stands out. Prompt number 7 is Avatar. Name a book or series with an incredibly immersive setting. And I remember Ian saying this is not Avatar The Last Airbender, this is like James Cameron Avatar. And so the one that I went with for this was the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden. I'm only halfway through the second book, but the immersive atmosphere is one of the like absolute strengths for this series. Obviously based on the name, the Winter Night trilogy, you can tell what it's supposed to feel like, but in the first book, The Bear and the Nightingale, you are just so immersed in this cold Russian wilderness setting. Like you can really feel it. Like you can feel the cold of the characters huddled around their oven for warmth in the winter, and how cold it is when they have to go out into the forest to do things, and like it just seeps into your bones, like you can feel it with them. So that was definitely something that stood out about this, and it has continued into the second book. Prompt number 8 is Toy Story. Name a book or series aimed at younger audiences that you love. And for this, I'm gonna go with A Lot's Away by Darcy Littlebadger. This is sort of like a middle grade young YA novel, and it follows A Lot's Away, and she experiences something odd because her cousin dies, but she experiences something that suggests, it's sort of like a vision that suggests that he might have actually been murdered. And so she and her best friend decide to go do a little bit more investigating into what actually happened. And A Lot's Away's family itself has a lot of really cool family history and stories, and they have their own kind of magic, and this is a world where magic is sort of normalized, like these creatures and these like concepts, they exist and they are fully realized in this world. So it is a very whimsical story, and it is very, very, I would say, heartwarming, and I just loved A Lot's Away. I would definitely recommend it to most people. So prompt number 9 is James Bond, and this is a book or series that rests on the back of its protagonist. And this is actually one that I had a lot of trouble with, because even when I feel like there is a character that stands out in a book or series, I feel like a lot of them have at least enough strong characters that I can't really say that one is carrying it on their back. So the one that I decided to go with for this was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And I think that if you know the premise of this book, my reasoning for picking this one is pretty clear, because in this book we follow Addie LaRue, who in the early 1700s runs away from an arranged marriage, basically makes a deal with the devil in the woods, and this deal is so that she'll be able to live a life free until she's ready to give her soul back over to the devil, and in exchange, like, she will be able to live and she will be totally free. And so this story spans like 300 years. And throughout that time, for a lot of it, Addie is living a very solitary life. And so for that reason, I do feel like she is really the character that carries this book on her back. Not that that's a bad thing, because I really enjoyed Addie and her character and her story. Next up, for prompt number 10 is Star Wars, and that is your favorite multi-generational story. So this one was easy for me because I haven't read that many multi-generational stories, but also The Long Price Quartet, being a multi-generational story, is one of my favorite series of all time. So naturally, I would pick it for this. But The Long Price Quartet is Asian-inspired fantasy that spans like 60 years. So we start with the characters when they are like teenagers, or like teenagers to like 20, and every book has a break between it of maybe like 13 years. So we really follow the major events of these people's lives, and the characters are the strength of these stories. So you really get to know the people from each generation as they grow and develop, even though there are time jumps. It's phenomenally done. So I love Daniel Abraham for giving us that series, and The Long Price Quartet fits that perfectly. Next up, prompt number 11 is Rocky, and that is to name a book or series with your favorite underdog. This is another one that I had to do a little bit of thinking about, but I came to the conclusion that the Books of Babel would be perfect for this because of our main character, Senlin. At the start of the series, Senlin takes his wife Maria on their honeymoon to the Tower of Babel, and he pretty much immediately loses her, and so he's on a quest to find his wife, but he finds himself woefully unprepared for everything that's in the tower and everything that is going to be thrown at him, and Senlin is definitely an underdog, and an underdog that a lot of the times has no idea what's even happening or how to be prepared for what's happening. But there's quite a lot of excitement and development on his part, and he is also just like a riveting character to follow. I love being in Senlin's head. I love his thought processes. Like, he's an academic, and the way that he thinks is so interesting. So yeah, I really think that he fits as an underdog, especially in those earlier books before he finds his footing in the story. I love that. Okay, so prompt number 12 is Mission Impossible. Name your favorite heist story. So I had two very strong candidates for this, but I decided to choose one of those answers for another question that's coming up. So the one that I settled on for this is Mistborn: The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. And I don't really want to go too much into why Mistborn is a heist story, but the general idea is that we have a cast of characters banding together and trying to take down the Lord Ruler, who is like this godlike figure who rules with an iron fist over the world in Mistborn. So they're trying to take him down. That's kind of like the main structure of the plot, but there is so much more about Mistborn that I could talk about Mistborn for ages. So I won't, but it's good and you should read it. So we come to number 13, which is Pirates of the Caribbean. Name a book or series with a shady character you can't help but love. And this is where the other one comes in, because my answer for this is The Lies of Locke Lamora, or just the Gentleman Bastard series in general, because Locke Lamora, heist master. Love this, love this series for heists as well. But Locke Lamora is very much a shady character that I can't help but love. He is smart, he is witty. I love being inside of his head. I love the way that he thinks. I love the way that the story is so intricate and intentional. And this also means that Locke has a lot of secrets. I mean, I think that the title of the first book is pretty self-explanatory on why Locke is shady, because you hear the lies of Locke Lamora and you're like, what's this guy hiding? Prompt number 14 is The Fast and the Furious. Name a book or series with a super fast-paced plot. And so this is another one that I didn't struggle with it, but I did have to think about it because I don't read a lot of books that are super fast paced because that doesn't tend to be my taste. I like to be able to spend time with characters. But one that stood out to me that I read that I did feel had a fast-paced plot was Leviathan Wakes by James S. A. Corey. And I read that last year, but it is very much at its core, the first book is a mystery and it's also a space opera. So it's very expansive. We're talking about like different planets and spaceships and the politics of all these different factions. But for me, it very much had sort of like an action movie plot once we got going. There was a lot of things to be done between the initiation of the plot and where it ended up. So I definitely think that Leviathan Wakes was a fast-paced book. And then finally, prompt 15 is the Marvel and DC universes. Name a book or series that has huge payoffs. And so I even commented this on Ian's video that I'm stealing his answer and that my answer would have been the same. And that is The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. I have a feeling that a lot of people who do this tag, who are reading The Stormlight Archive, will also be tempted to make this their answer, because when I think of like absolutely epic fantasy with huge payoffs, I mean, Wheel of Time could also probably fit the bill. But even though the Stormlight Archive, in terms of both arcs, isn't even halfway done, I still feel like it has some of the hugest payoffs that I've ever read in fantasy. So Brandon Sanderson is great with that. I mean, everybody knows when they read his books about the Sanderlanche, this avalanche of action that happens at the end of his books, and he really knows how to do his plotting so that you get payoffs for the things you were waiting for payoffs on. So Sanderson really is fantastic at that. There were also some bonus prompts. I'm not going to include them, but I will include them in the description of my video. They will also be in the description of Ian's video, of course, since he wrote the prompts and he included them in his description. But yeah, just in case you're interested, those will be there. But I think that 15 is plenty, and I don't even know if I could think of 6 more series to answer any more of these questions. However, I did have a lot of fun answering these. I think that the prompts are fantastic, and so I am excited to see more people do this tag. And then in that case, I am going to tag Klaus from The Contradictorian. I want to see him talk about things that he likes. I feel like Klaus deserves a joyous tag, a joyous video in his life to make. Oh, is he going to be able to think of 15 things that he likes? I'm just kidding, Klaus. And second of all, I am going to tag Ben from Overly Average Ben because I know that he is looking for a tag video to do, and I think that this is a great one for him. So he knows a lot more about movies and TV than I do, so I think he'll come up with some great answers for this. So those are the people that I am tagging. Thank you again to Ian for tagging me in this one. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Please like if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more content from me. I post new videos every Monday and Thursday, and I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!